How's it going? My name is James. Welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I, quite frankly, have been feeling a little overwhelmed with the number of videos that I need to put out in order to keep up with the amount of books that I read last month, which is a little weird for me. So in order to make sure that I talk about each of the books that I've read over the last month, I'm going to do kind of like a mini review video. The books that I'm going to talk about today were both books that I read on vacation. And so I thought I would just kind of give them both their own little mini reviews and just kind of dive into it from there. So I hope you enjoy. This is a little bit different, but yeah, we'll just jump straight into it. So the first book that I read on vacation was one that I've been really looking forward to. It actually starts the next series that I'm going to be kind of replacing the Mistborn Era 2 videos and the Sun Eater videos with, as far as just series that I'm covering on the channel as I'm reading through them. And that was Malice by John Gwynne. I was super excited to read this one and get my kind of backlog catch up for John Gwynne's books as a whole started. My goal is to be able to be completely caught back up by the time that Bloodsworn 3 comes out next year. I don't think, at least at the time of this recording, that it has been announced, even the name or when it's going to be released. And so I'm just eagerly waiting for news about the next Bloodsworn book. But I want to be completely caught up with everything else that John Gwynne has written. So basically everything in the Banished Lands before then. And so I started that with Malice. And I think that I probably suffered a little bit reading Malice by reading Bloodsworn first. That's not to say that Malice wasn't good, that I didn't enjoy it. I really enjoyed Malice, actually. I think that it was one of the better books this year. But by and large, I think that I was kind of expecting Gwynne's writing capacity at like the Bloodsworn level, where it's very polished, very clean. Well, I say clean, I mean, those books are not clean. They're pretty gritty, but you know what I mean, at least from like a written experience. I feel like that the plot in the Bloodsworn books are paced super well. I have reviews for both of the other Bloodsworn books up on the channel. You can go check those out. This book is a much different book from Bloodsworn. Maybe if you're a longtime John Gwynne fan, you would be looking at me like, duh, like that's super obvious. But I guess I went in with kind of that expectation, so maybe my opinion of this suffered a little bit. But where Malice really hooked me is that I am kind of a sucker for traditional heroic fantasy. I really actually enjoy the traditional fantasy tropes, mainly because if you followed the channel, I didn't really grow up reading a lot of that stuff, the traditional, the classics, outside of Lord of the Rings and a little bit of Narnia. I didn't even finish Narnia because I didn't really like it. The traditional and the classic fantasy stuff never really landed with me. And so I actually am not as tired or over the tropes as maybe a lot of people who've been reading fantasy for, their entire lives might be. And so I didn't really necessarily need John Gwynne to reinvent the wheel for me or turn a bunch of tropes on their head, which he actually kind of does in a lot of ways. But this book still captured all of the things that I love from the Bloodsworn books, but I could definitely see how Bloodsworn progressed from this series, how the shield wall combat, the found family, but also like the sense of real familial ties is very present in this book. That's a family, I think, is a much heavier theme in this book than it even is in Bloodsworn. Just the relationship between Corbin and his sister Kywin and his whole family, really. Tannen and Gwyneth, I think his mom's name is Gwyneth, and Gar. It was very well done. And I think that you can really tell that John Gwynne is an author who writes from his heart. He writes his experiences with family very knowingly. And it's something that I have grown to really love about him as an author. That being said, Malice was probably not the best book that I've read this year, but it was definitely a good book, and I would recommend it. And I've heard that The Faithful and the Fallen only gets better. Theo over at Rekindled Reader is just dying for me to jump into Valor, and I'm really excited to start that this month. Just kind of keep working my way through The Faithful and the Fallen, looking forward to Bloodsworn 3. So I think that will be a really good time. So Malice, good book. Check it out if you haven't already, and if you have, and I'm just super late to the party, well, I'm looking forward to continuing to read this series. Man, short reviews are hard. Next up, so I took 4 books with me on vacation. I took Malice, I took The Grace of Kings, which I'm actually reading right now. I took Theft of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan, which is the Ray Area Revelations first book omnibus. It has the first 2 books in it. So I took that, and I also took The Lies of Locke Lamora. And this book blew my mind. I mean, this book genuinely is one of those books that I finished it, and just after I finished crying through the climax of it, actually I didn't cry mainly because I was sitting in a room with my wife and our best friends, and I just didn't want to embarrass myself in front of them, but I was legitimately holding back tears at the climax of the story in this book. After I finished it, I just felt really dumb that I hadn't read it yet, which I know is kind of a stupid thing to say, but it just clicked with me. Everything about this book clicked with me. The world building, the characters, the plot, the witty relationships between the characters, everything just snapped super well for me, and I loved it. I mean, I think that I flew through this in like 2 days or something, which for me is fast. I mean, that's granted, I was sitting on a beach for a lot of that, but I just didn't want to do anything else but finish this book. Scott Lynch, especially for a debut novel, I mean, just wow. I think that this is one of the best first books in a series that I've ever read, being that like it's not full of a bunch of the stuff that first books kind of get stuck in, which is setting up the world, setting up the conflict, setting up a second book, really, which is a criticism that I would also echo to Malice. But Malice, you could tell that John Gwynne had a whole series in mind. The only criticism that I think that I would give this is that I might be a little disappointed that there's sequels. I think that this book could work really, really, really well as a standalone. I mean, by the end of this book, I was very satisfied with the ending. I could see the open-ended points in the plot where Scott Lynch can continue to go, but I didn't necessarily feel like I had to just immediately go find Red Seas Under Red Skies and just burn through that one too. It's a weird criticism because I loved this book, but I'm not dying to get to the next one. I thought this book was okay, but I am dying to get to the next one. Maybe I'm broken. Maybe there's something wrong with me. The world of The Lies of Locke Lamora, I think, is one of the most fun fantasy worlds, because I think that what Scott Lynch does really well in that book is he plays with juxtaposition a lot. I don't really think that it's much of a spoiler to say that Locke Lamora, is a witty, charismatic, fun character to follow, but the world that he inhabits, that all of these characters inhabit, the city of Kaymor, is brutal. I mean, it's dark. The whole book takes place in this one city. The city is so vividly realized. It has all these little different boroughs or neighborhoods that are individually their own characters almost, and the people who come from these places inhibit the characteristics and the traits of that specific area. And the names of the boroughs, I think, are so thematic. You have Catchfire, which is literally where a lot of the troublemakers and criminals, and if it catches fire, they're not rushing to put them out, and so I thought that it was just brilliant, honestly. It was just such a fast-paced, fun ride, and I can't recommend it enough. It was perfectly my taste. But yeah, like I said, I think I'm just weird. I loved Locke Lamora, but I'm not dying to get to the next book. And I thought Malice was honestly just good. Not bad, not amazing, but good. But I'm dying to get to Valor. So yeah, it was an interesting good week of reading. And I hope that these little mini reviews are somewhat satisfying, but I wanted to make sure that I was at least talking about each of the books that I've been reading in the last month, because quite frankly, on top of these reviews, I'm wanting to put out a lot of end of the year and next year planning videos. So I think that those are kind of fun to see what everybody has thought of their year as a whole and is looking forward to doing in the next year. And so I hope that this video is satisfying in a different way that maybe a full review would be. I think that that's all I've got. If you're new here, be sure to like and subscribe. Click the little bell icon icon to get every notification for when I post a video. It really helps the channel out whenever you like videos too. So if you enjoyed what you watched here, be sure to click that little thumbs up button and let me know in the comments if you've read either of these. I know that, like I said, I'm a little late to the party on these. I'm kind of trying to catch up on just really all of my fantasy backlog in general, but especially the Locke Lamora and Malice were two books that I was just very excited to get through, and to bust through both of those on vacation was just really satisfying for me. So I think that's all I got for this one, but I'll catch you in the next one.